When the CEO's 24-year-old son posted a selfie sitting at my desk with the caption, "Finally running this place," he thought he was marking his territory. The entire office saw it. My manager even laughed and told me to clear out my personal items to make room for the boss's golden child. They assumed I was just a quiet senior analyst who would pack her bags, smile politely, and take the fall for his upcoming failures. What they forgot was that 4 years ago, I drafted our corporate compliance framework, including an obscure safety rule buried on page 42 called Clause 7. I didn't scream or throw a scene. I simply took a screenshot of his post, attached our firm's binding contract, and forwarded it directly to the board of directors with a single sentence. Per Clause 7, he just voided the entire merger. Before I reveal how one single sentence brought down an untouchable CEO, drop a comment below with the city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these corporate chess moves reach. My name is Clara Vance. I'm 28 years old, and for the past 4 years, I've made a conscious career choice to remain completely invisible. While my colleagues at Sterling Financial competed for executive attention, I sat in my quiet corner office as a senior risk and compliance analyst, meticulously mapping out corporate bylaws and regulatory frameworks. I knew every policy line, every compliance loop, and every legal trap embedded in our structure. Everything changed when our CEO, Richard Sterling, decided to turn the firm into his personal family trust. Enter his son, Julian Sterling. At 24, Julian possessed a degree from an unaccredited online school, an unearned sense of absolute superiority, and zero professional experience. Yet, overnight, CEO Sterling appointed him as the lead associate on our highest value accounts I had personally built from the ground up over 48 grueling months. On his very first morning, Julian walked into my office without knocking, tossed his designer jacket onto my couch, and took a seat at my desk. Before I could even ask what he was doing, he pulled out his phone, flashed a smirking selfie in my chair, and uploaded it online. The caption read, "Finally running this place." My manager walked past, saw the post, and simply chuckled, telling me to pack up my desk accessories to make room for the future of the company. They assumed I was just a docile, quiet employee who would accept being pushed aside. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Over the next 2 weeks, the slow erasure of my career began. CEO Sterling systematically removed my name from every major email thread, reassigning my 4 years of painstaking analytical work directly to Julian. I was instructed to handle behind-the-scenes support, a corporate euphemism for doing all of Julian's work while he took the credit. Watching Julian attempt to handle high-stakes financial risk was like watching a child play with matches near a gas line. On his 3rd day, he carelessly authorized a high-risk offshore transaction that completely violated our internal audit protocols. I took the report directly to my manager, carefully highlighting the errors and explaining the severe financial liability. He didn't even look at the data. Instead, he leaned back, smiled patronizingly, and said, "Clara, part of being a team player is making the CEO's son look good. Your job isn't to critique Julian, it's to mentor him silently. If you can't adapt to the new leadership dynamic, we can easily find someone who will." That was the ultimatum: surrender my career to protect an entitled heir or get fired. As I walked out of his office, the anger that had been simmering inside me suddenly turned cold and clear. The corporate hierarchy was rigged, and trying to play by their rules would only lead to my destruction. They thought my quiet nature was a sign of weakness, but silence isn't submission, it's observation. It was time to stop playing defense and start playing chess. That night, while the rest of the office was celebrating another one of Julian's unearned achievements at happy hour, I stayed late in my darkened cubicle. I logged into the master archive of our firm's legal framework, the massive 500-page operational agreement that had governed our multi-million-dollar merger 4 years ago. I knew every inch of that document because I had helped draft it, and I knew exactly where the time bomb was buried. On page 42, nestled deep within the compliance appendices, sat Clause 7. It was an obscure, non-negotiable risk mitigation rule specifically designed to protect the company's liability insurance. Clause 7 explicitly stated that if any unvetted, uncertified individual gained administrative access to classified client financial systems or publicly broadcasted internal workspace operations without secondary compliance authorization, it constituted an immediate breach of fiduciary duty. The penalty? Automatic revocation of executive voting rights, immediate voiding of partner liability coverage, and the instant cancellation of any pending merger or acquisition deals tied to those systems. CEO Sterling had been so eager to fast-track his son into a corner office that he skipped every single mandatory background check and security clearance protocol required by our bylaws. Julian wasn't just sitting at my desk. He was actively logging into high-security client portfolios using my administrative credentials, leaving a digital trail of unauthorized access across our network. And then came the final piece of the puzzle, his social media post. By geotagging my desk, broadcasting our internal monitor setup, and bragging about running the place, Julian had publicly documented his own illegal access. I spent the next 3 hours systematically gathering the evidence. I saved system access logs, cross-referenced IP addresses, and took high-resolution screenshots. I wasn't just building a case. I was preparing a checkmate. The day of the annual shareholder summit arrived, and the atmosphere on the executive floor was electric. CEO Richard Sterling had organized an emergency board meeting in the glass-walled conference room to finalize a crucial $40 million buyout deal with our offshore investors. It was supposed to be his crowning achievement, the moment he cemented his legacy and officially announced Julian as the heir apparent to the firm's executive board. From my desk outside the glass doors, I watched the board members take their seats. Richard stood at the head of the long oak table, beaming with pride as Julian sat right beside him, wearing a bespoke suit and smirking at the room. Julian had been handed my Q4 risk assessment portfolio, the culmination of 6 months of my life, and was preparing to present it as his own. My manager walked past my desk, giving me a dismissive nod. "Make sure the projector works, Clara," he whispered. "Don't ruin Julian's big moment." I looked at the clock. It was 9:58 a.m., 2 minutes before the presentation was scheduled to begin. I opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Every document was attached. The time-stamped network access logs proving Julian used my administrative login, the security footage of him at my workstation, the screenshot of his viral social media post, and a highlighted copy of page 42 of our corporate bylaws. I addressed the email to the entire board of directors, the firm's lead external legal counsel, and the senior audit committee. Subject line: urgently required risk disclosure, material breach of Clause 7. In the body of the email, I kept it brief, clinical, and deadly. I wrote, "Please be advised that administrative access logs and public broadcasts confirm unauthorized system entry under my credentials. Per Clause 7 of the 2022 merger bylaws, the current buyout agreement is legally compromised, and executive liability insurance is rendered void effective immediately." At precisely 10 a.m., as Richard raised his glass to toast the new deal, I hit send. Inside the glass conference room, the reaction was instantaneous. First, the lead external counsel's phone chimed. He glanced down casually, but as his eyes scanned the attachments, his face drained of all color. He abruptly interrupted Richard mid-sentence, slamming his laptop shut and sliding my email across to the board chairman. Within seconds, the room erupted into total chaos. The chairman stood up, so fast his chair topped backward, his voice booming through the glass walls as he demanded an immediate halt to the presentation. The board members realized that if Julian had accessed those classified systems without security clearances, the multi-million-dollar deal wasn't just delayed, it was legally toxic, exposing every board member to personal financial liability. 10 minutes later, the conference room doors burst open. Richard Sterling marched straight toward my desk, his face flushed with rage, closely followed by a bewildered Julian. "What is the meaning of this, Clara?" Richard spat, leaning over my desk in an attempt to intimidate me. "You've made a catastrophic mistake. You're going to send a retraction email to the board right now, or I will ensure you never work in this industry again." I didn't flinch. I sat back, folded my hands, and looked him dead in the eye. "There's no mistake, Mr. Sterling," I said, my voice echoing clearly across the now silent office floor. Julian logged into secure financial networks using my credentials and publicly broadcasted it online. Under Clause 7, that is an unpardonable breach of fiduciary duty. And if you attempt to terminate me for reporting a mandatory compliance violation, you will be violating federal whistleblower protection laws, which carries direct criminal charges. Richard froze. For the first time in his career, he realized he wasn't arguing with a submissive employee. He was trapped. The board didn't waste any time. Within 2 hours, an emergency independent forensic audit was launched, locking down every server and corporate account tied to Julian and Richard. The evidence I provided was airtight, and no amount of executive spin could undo the legal nightmare Julian's hubris had created. By late afternoon, the final verdict came down. To prevent catastrophic regulatory fines and save the company from complete bankruptcy, the board of directors stripped CEO Richard Sterling of his executive authority and forced him into an immediate, humiliating retirement. As for Julian, he didn't even get the chance to clear his desk. 2 uniformed security officers escorted him out of the building, his designer jacket slung over his arm while the entire office watched in complete silence. The Golden Boy's corporate career was over before it had even truly begun. The next morning, I was called into the main conference room. Standing there wasn't a room full of angry executives, but the board chairman and lead counsel. They recognized that while my actions had derailed their immediate deal, my uncompromising integrity had saved them from a far worse fate: federal prosecution and financial ruin. They didn't fire me. Instead, the chairman extended his hand and offered me the position of interim head of corporate risk and compliance, complete with a corner office and a salary 3 times what I was previously making. They thought my quiet nature was weakness. In reality, it was just strategic precision. Standing in my new office, looking out over the city skyline, I realized the ultimate lesson of corporate chess: never mistake silence for weakness. The loud people often make the most noise, but it's the quiet observers who hold the real power. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to deal with an unearned boss or toxic nepotism at your workplace? Tell me your story in the comments below. If you enjoyed this victory, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the link on your screen for another crazy story. Thanks for watching.